And as the music cuts out, my voice cuts in. And we are in to the first of our 3 games tonight. Most likely, potentially only 2. We might see a 2-0 sweep of our first Reverie Rift Cup finals. My name is Octavian, and while usually I am joined by Effects, tonight I will be flying solo, and I'm sure I'll get a lot of help from chat in that regard, because I've got to carry a lot of weight here. Effect usually does the heavy lifting on the casting desk. I'm not too ashamed to say it. So hopefully I'll be able to handle this immense responsibility on my own. I feel like I can do it, but I need you guys to back me up. However, let's get into the picks and bans, or what little of it has transpired. It is a hacker and band away and a rumble on the other side. And I haven't even mentioned our teams. Normally the overlay would do that for me, but with this new fancy client and all, we don't actually have an overlay quite prepared yet. We will next Saturday. Don't you worry your little pretty heads. But as of right now, we're going vanilla, and it will be Supernova 0 on the blue side. Not Supernova's main roster, not Supernova proper. They actually beat out their parent team to make it to the finals here, facing off against the contender of Kinesis Esports over on the red side. So I apologize again for the lack of the overlay. You're just going to have to remember which team is which color. It's what I have to do every time anyways. So for once we're on an even footing, you and me, dear viewer. We've gotten through pretty much the rest of the bands here, though, just waiting on the last one from Kinesis Esports. Good amount of jungle focus from Supernova, which makes sense, though Olav on Kinesis Esports, we've seen this player for the last few weeks, showing up again and again, always making it to the semis, sometimes to the finals in our weekly qualifier tournaments, and pretty much every single time he plays Olaf, which makes sense given the man's name. So I'm surprised to see other jungle bans being thrown his way when really I don't think he's going to be too uncomfortable just grabbing the Olaf for himself here. I don't even think that's got to be a priority pick. Not a lot of players actually play that nowadays, so he might be able to just stave that pick off until later on in the draft, get some more powerful picks early on for the rest of his team. Lulu is going to be the first pick for Supernova 0, though. Makes plenty of sense. If Lulu isn't banned out, you first pick Lulu. It's been that way for about a month now, and I don't see it changing anytime soon. I don't know of any proposed Lulu changes on the horizon. Kled would be an interesting lock-in. You don't see too terribly much of him, though he has started to come into his own as players become more and more familiar with the Champions kit and able to navigate the laning phase a little bit better. And Ivern is actually going to get locked in, so Olav will not be going to his time-honored Olaf, and instead will be going for a much more support-focused jungle pick. Interesting. Okay. I'm excited to see that. Olaf usually plays a very carry-oriented style out of the jungle with, of course, as I've mentioned, his Olaf pick, getting some early snowball, getting the ability to be that front line for his team. This is going to be an entirely different way of playing that we're seeing from this player. Some really quick picks from Supernova 0, though, as the draft heads back over to their side. It will be Zaya and Oriana locked in. I'm assuming it's not going to be a Rakan alongside the Zaya. Usually that's what you'd see, is that pairing works quite well together. But since the Lulu first pick came through, I'm assuming it's Zaya Lulu bottom lane. And Vladimir for Simple is best, a player I'm not quite as familiar with as some of the others on Kinesis Esports. And Bobby Big Plays we've seen go to the Lucian quite often, but it looks like they may hold their AD carry pick until the very end, which makes sense. Well, it actually doesn't make that terribly much sense. I would imagine they'd want to counterpick the mid lane. They aren't actually going to be counterpicking anything here anymore, because unless they're picking their AD carry based around what the enemy mid lane goes for, which is to some degree certainly relevant in the matter of an AD carry pick. There are certain mid laners that you just don't want to play certain AD carries into, and junglers for that matter, as Kha'Zix gets hovered. Though the mid lane's already picked as well, so it would really just be the top lane for Supernova 0 that they'd be playing around by saving their AD carry for the last pick. I'm a little confused by Kinesis's choices in the latter half of this draft, but they've certainly drafted a strong composition for themselves one way or another. I'm just surprised that they haven't placed that priority on trying to counterpick a solo lane that we see so many teams so often do. It's a strategy that just is quite glaringly obvious on the red side, and one that a lot of teams will go for in amateur level tournaments like the ones that we host here at Reverie. and especially when the teams are less familiar with one another and you can't specifically counterpick people. But Darius will be locked in for Ednog, and really big meme will be getting Kha'Zix in the jungle, so that will be finalized. I'm excited for the Darius v Kled lane. This is going to be a bloodthirsty matchup. Both of these are very snowbally, very frustrating champions to deal with in the top lane, so whichever one gets the lead early on in this lane is going to absolutely dominate for at least the rest of laning phase, I imagine. The issue that I fear a little bit for Ednog is that Beniona might prove a little more resilient, because Kled can still be very useful to his team with his ultimate charging into battle and providing that speed buff, whereas Darius doesn't have that same sort of utility. So it's even more imperative for Ednog to start the snowball rolling, but there's the Lucine that I anticipated for Bobby Big Plays, and we've got both compositions fully locked in. I imagine these players are going to swap around a little bit. Don't think it's going to be a Darius support tonight. And, let's just take one last look over these comps, see what they excel at overall. My main worry, actually, for Supernova Zero is this top lane. I feel like Ednog now has just this huge sort of requirement to get snowballing on this Darius pick, simply because he won't have anywhere near the amount of utility that a Kled can supply to the team if he falls behind. So I wouldn't be surprised if we saw really big meme focusing the top lane and trying to get a lead for Ednog, because if they don't go for that sort of plan of action, then they could end up just with some, not really, dead weight is kind of a strong term. Darius still does some damage if he comes out of an even lane, but if he doesn't come out of an even lane, he could be in some real trouble. If he comes out of a lane behind, then yeah, that's going to be a big problem. Looking across the rest of the lanes, Orianna versus Vladimir is probably not going to be particularly exciting. Of course, we'll keep an eye on the Ivern early on. Could be some sort of cheesy jungle invade planned. And the Lulu first pick actually going into a really solid matchup. Malzahar does not do very well into Lulu. Whoever Malzahar ultis, usually he's within range to be knocked up by a wild growth, or Lulu can just polymorph him. It's very easy to interrupt Nether Grasp, and Lulu also has a really easy time of proccing Malzahar passive, so overall, a pretty balanced draft to both sides. There's strengths and weaknesses to each composition, but we've still got, of course, the spectator delay to get through before we can get into the match. So, give me just about 2 minutes here. We're going to cut to some musical interlude, and we will be back once we've got action. Don't go anywhere. Alrighty, everybody, welcome to the Rift. Hopefully, Project Panda will be back with us soon. Yep, we're going to get a quick pause while he reconnects. And welcome to the first game of our best of three finals here for the first Reverie Rift Cup tournament that we've hosted thus far. Of course, we have had plenty of Reverie weekly tournaments, but it is only recently that we've rebranded and we've got this fancy monthly Rift Cup tournament point setup thing going. It's the best way I could have possibly chosen to describe that. And our first contenders are, surprisingly enough, Supernova Zero, who beat out their parent team Supernova to make it here to the finals, facing off against Kinesis Esports, a slightly less surprising team given that they were the second seed. But Supernova Zero were the fourth seed coming out of our month's worth of placement tournaments, if you want to sort of think of them that way. And as such, it is rather impressive that they've made it this far. I wouldn't say that they're the favorites to win here, but they certainly have a great chance, especially with the backing of an organization like Supernova, who are something of a powerhouse in the amateur scene. At least here at Reverie, there's something of a powerhouse, with 3 teams from their organization making it into our Rift Cup. So quite a force to be reckoned with. We've got a pretty standard spread from both teams here across the river, as neither side is looking for any sort of level 1 shenaniganry. And yeah, we've got some time perhaps to talk about these lane matchups. Time perhaps to get to know one another. How you doing, everybody? My name's Octavian. Usually I got a friend to talk to on the desk here. Usually I got effects helping me out, doing some color casting, but, you know, tonight it's just me. Well, not just me. Me, you, and 10 players looking to rip each other's guts out. Or suck each other's blood out. As we're hovering over Vladimir here on the Rift. And all for $180 of prize money, which is split between gift cards for Deeko, one of our sponsors, and actual real hard cold cash that you can spend in any store that accepts real money, that is. None of that foreign crap, just American dollars here at Reverie. No, I'm kidding. If we've got any foreign viewership, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to offend you. Anyway, let's get down and dirty with the laning phase. As I mentioned, mid lane is likely going to be a little bit boring, but perhaps the directed camera thinks otherwise, as Simple as Best and Platypus are just going to be having a bit of a farm fest. Bottom lane I'm slightly more interested in, because these are 2 sort of mid-range skirmishy AD carries, and then some fairly aggressive supports. Malzahar wanting to play up in the lane, and Lulu being adept at playing against supports that want to play up in the lane. And as far as top goes, thank you directed camera, or not. I imagine the matchup will fall at first towards Darius is actually what I was anticipating, though it looks like Kled is getting a good shove on. Because Darius does have a little bit more wave clear. Bear trap on a rope, not able to stand up to the good old axe and spin. But it looks like Darius is actually getting shoved in, so Ednog perhaps playing a little bit more cautiously and a little slower in this lane than I anticipated. As Platypus continues his shove up mid. Project Panda getting harassed back. Good silence from Rangito, but he's still chugging away at the blue juice. Only half of his mana bar remaining. And I imagine neither team is going to take anything too aggressive early on. The anticipated early invade that I thought Olav might go for in this Ivern never really came to be, as he's actually only cleared out 1 quadrant of his own jungle so far. But then again, we are still only 3 minutes in, with a really, really early base from Really Big Meme. Wow. Fully clearing his bottom side jungle and then basing to go back towards the top side, presumably. Getting that heal. There actually was a real opportunity for Olav to invade because of that. And they've got a ward on that blue buff. They're going to spot out the fact that Kha'Zix is a little bit late to his second buff here. But they're also going to be spotting out the fact that Really Big Meme will be top side. That's not going to be for a little while, and we've got incoming pings, as well as an incoming tree man. Ednog going for the trade with Beniona, knows that he has backup coming in from the side. There's the trigger seed and a bush for a bit of range. Or, pardon me, Beniona knowing he's got backup coming from the side. As we've got Kha'Zix roaming to the top side as well. Foregoing his blue buff in an attempt to interrupt the gank from Ivern, and neither jungler will get too terribly much out of it. No summoners burned, no lives lost, but Beniona did lose his trusty steed, and now getting shoved back under turret. Speaking of getting shoved, Project Panda and Tyr were, but they've got some good damage onto Rangito. Bobby Big Play's getting chased back as well. A few more Tyrs down. The Feather Call, or pardon me. Oh man, I'm forgetting the name of the ability. But the snare doesn't land. Didn't have enough feathers down. Still though, forces a flash, just with the sheer damage output from the Xayah. Some exciting action, but still no blood, and that's what we're here for. We want to see that first blood come down. Beniona working hard to get Skarl to come back out of the bushes. There we go. Able to remount with another shot from his pocket pistol. And that is one of the strengths of Kled in lane. Very difficult to keep down, but Ednog still is winning some of these trades. That's Courage of the Colossus Darius. That's interesting. He's only got the one way to proc that, but I suppose it is fairly reliable. And now Platypus is going to be landing the Dissonance onto Simple as Best, but pulls only a flash. Well, I say only a flash. It's good nonetheless, but Olaf may have caught himself out here. As really big meme is more than a match for this Ivern. But Olaf does have some friends coming to help him out. Rangito roaming up from the bottom lane and Vladimir from mid, so Olaf will be able to saunter back out. And did actually successfully steal away the Raptor, so didn't have to burn too much for it either. Still waiting on that first blood to come down. Apologies, I was just messing with some OBS settings. As Ednog gets chased backwards by a freshly returned Beniona. However, Ednog has also made it back home to base and has that passive ticking. The blood rage that changes oh so long ago now to Darius, making him super powerful in the 1v1, but Ednog still getting chased back and actually has to flash away. Beniona with a blood frenzy chunks him down to less than 100 hit points. As I said, this top lane matchup is going to be highly volatile. Whichever one of these laners gets ahead will be radioactive material, very difficult for the enemy to deal with. Project Panda and Tiersona looking for some control of their lane. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw repeated visits by both of these junglers to top side as they're hanging out in their respective top quadrants of the map. Tiersona playing very aggressively here. A few Voidlings from Rangito, but Project Panda could land the snare. There it is. The Ignite comes down, exhausted on Project Panda, but the heal and the flash to get the distance. First blood goes over to Tiersona. A little unfortunate that it lands on the Lulu, but still, it is drawn nonetheless. And that is gold going to the Xayah. And the Lulu. It's actually not too terribly unfortunate because it does mean that Tiersona will get his Sightstone a little earlier. If there's any time you do want gold on the support, it is in the first few minutes of the game. But they're going to be able to deny some farm to this Lucian, I'd imagine. Pushing him back under the turret. I don't think they quite have the power to dive here. That seems unreasonable. But Ivern is still hanging around on this side of the map just in case. And to answer the question, no, this is not just a single match. This is going to be a best-of-3 series to determine who takes it all home. All of the $180 in prize pool as Olav coming down to the bottom lane is looking for that knock-up. Daisy happy to oblige, lands it on 2. Tiersona and Project Panda melting away. There's the transferred space aids, but it's Bobby Big Plays that finishes the kill. And it's a double over to the Lucian. That is a nice way to even up a lane that was starting to look a little messy. And here's the Kled ulti. Beniona looking for his first roam of the game as well. Platypus gets knocked up under his turret, but the shockwave will whiff, and it's a game of missed ultis in the mid lane. Meanwhile, though, Bobby Big Plays and Olav, along with some help from their friendly neighborhood Golem, are taking down the Ocean Drake. As Platypus sans ult may still look for a duel with Simple as Best. And Ivern easily secures the dragon. This is looking like a good start for Kinesis Esports. As Bobby Big Plays is going to be basing on Bobby Big Money. Yeah? Good joke? Good joke. He's going to finish off that Cutlass as well as some attack speed to back it up and a pair of little wee booties to get him to lane faster and get him fighting faster as well. I would not say that Kinesis Esports have this in the bag by any means just yet, but certainly they've started to build some advantages for themselves. Unfortunate for Beniona that his roam didn't turn into anything of note. Now with the ulti down, he can't nearly take as much advantage of Ednog's lack of flash and actually is getting bullied back in the lane now. But that shouldn't last for too terribly long. As all eyes are now in the bottom lane. Project Panda does actually have the level 6 advantage here, and that, I imagine, is why Kinesis' duo is playing back a little bit, even though Bobby Big Plays does have a item advantage to some degree. He just hasn't hit that level 6 breakpoint, which is oh so crucial. And we may see Supernova try and take advantage of that as Bobby Big Plays gets chunked below half. Oh, really rough. He was just trying to push that lane up, trying to push the wave up to the turret so that it would bounce back towards him, because he knew that otherwise it would just be frozen for the next like minute and a half. Right in front of that turret in the absolute just anti-sweet spot. You don't want to be playing there. But really big meme is going to get caught out in the jungle, and Olav looking for some revenge for that earlier attempted 1v1. The knockup doesn't land, though. Falls a little short. Poor Daisy. She tried. She tried her best. Project Panda and Tiersona are going to keep the lane shoved up here, and actually are still doing a pretty good job despite the earlier double kill. But there's a flash in from Simple as Best. 2-man Shockwave. Platypus may have bought enough time for this teleport to resolve. And now Olav is a little bit cut off. Ednog looking to flank him. Flash away from the Ivern. Ednog still dribbling his way towards his opponent, though. There's a Q. There's one more auto. He just needs to get in ult range. If he can only make it, then he can land the dunk. And he finds it. A basketball bouncing off of the Ivern's skull. However, a kill in the bottom lane does equalize, as Ednog continues to try and wreak havoc here. We heard the musical cue for a Kled ulti as well, but not so much seemed to have resolved from it, and really big meme gets an easy kill. Okay. Didn't really have time to shotcast that one. You press Q on him, and then he died. That's all you get. That's all you get for that Malzahar kill, guys. I'm sorry. I didn't have time for anything else. That's Kha'Zix for you. Kha'Zix against an isolated support, no less. Supernova with a few kind of messy fights to even up the kills there. They get a 2-for-1 trade overall. And the kills actually go on very important targets. Ednog, as I mentioned, this top lane is highly volatile, needs that gold to start snowballing against Beniona. Though the window for snowballing has kind of closed a bit. And really big meme getting a kill is a really big deal. Yuck. As Kha'Zix does, of course, need that gold to scale, as we all know. As anyone who's played against a fed Kha'Zix knows, it is a terrifying, terrifying thing. But, worryingly, the third kill, and every kill so far for Kinesis Esports, has gone to Bobby Big Plays. And if he lives up to his name, he may very well be able to carry his team to victory off the back of this early lead. We'll see how the Lucian play pans out. As Platypus is going for a trade with Simple as Best, and winning it pretty handily. There's the command attack, 100 health left, and Shockwave finishes the deal! Why did Simple turn back? I mean, he had Olav behind him, but at that point, he had 100 health left. You should be pulling and running. Or floating, I don't know what you would call it, but leaving, nonetheless. Unfortunate for Simple as Best, who's actually not had a terrible lane up until now, but a Platypus with that assist from the earlier fights and a kill. He's going to be able to finish off some itemization now. Olav looking for a gank on the bottom side, but as I mentioned in the draft, Malzahar ulti not too terribly effective against a Lulu. And the trade of an ult for a W, in terms of cooldowns, does not really favor the Malzahar. Thank you, Beniona. It's a very nice hat you've got there, Beniona. Oh, and not going to be pulling him back. And yeah, we've got kind of quiet across the rift now. Not too terribly much for these teams to fight over. This opening has gone much more evenly than I anticipated. Supernova Zero showing why they've made it to the finals, why they beat out Supernova proper to make it here. I mean, we've mentioned that 2 or 3 times now since the draft, but I feel like it is a feat worthy of repeating. Honestly, it would be like Cloud9 Challenger, like C9C, back when they still existed, beating out Cloud9 themselves. It's just not really something which you anticipate. And it's commendable. So, well done by Supernova Zero to make it this far. And well done by them to hold their own and, no less, have a lead 13 minutes in. So I think it's time we stopped underestimating these guys and gave them the respect they deserve. I mean, they've got some players that I certainly recognize on their roster. But Platypus going to be pulling Simple as Best back in, and Platypus winning another easy fight. Simple is really drastically overestimating his ability to take these 1v1s, or drastically overestimating Olav's ability to get into the fight quickly, because every time he's gone for one of these, Olav has been nearby and potentially ready to help and bail him out of a situation, but he's never been close enough for Simple as Best's maneuvers to make sense to me. As Bobby Big Plays gets snared up, despite the fact that this is a 3-0 Lucian, Project Panda and Tirsona still have the lane shoved up constantly, which is actually rather worrying. I think it's because the Malzahar just doesn't really have much threat into a Lulu lane. And there's only so much that a 3-0 AD carry can do. Paniona tossed off of his mount. And in all of that, there was a dragon soloed out. Really big meme on Kha'Zix, perfectly capable of taking dragons himself. He's a big jungler. He's all grown up, doesn't need no team to help him take the dragons down. And evens up the Ocean Drake disadvantage that his team was previously laboring under. Kinesis looking for some vision control, though. And I'm excited for this laning phase to break. It's been a longer one as far as they go here at Reverie. Usually, in the finals, we have the laning phase breaks around like the 12, 13, 15 minute mark, somewhere in that range. And at this point, no turrets have even really been touched. There's been a few dragons, but they've been taken sort of as footnotes to the fights that have been happening. This has been a very laning-centric game so far, and once again, Simple as Best, dueling his counterpart while Olav is nearby, but this time it doesn't overcommit. Seems to have learned his lesson, at least to some degree. Ednog does not quite land the Noxian Diplomacy, but still gets a good trade, and is starting to dominate this lane with his Black Cleaver completed. Interestingly enough, Paniona has the same itemization choice, but it's just not doing as much work on the Kled. As really big meme and Ednog look to take that first turret. Project Panda now gonna be sent to the void by Rangito. As in the mid lane we have action, and suddenly things are just breaking out all over the map. Ignite coming down onto Platypus. Good pool by Simple as Best, looking to make up for some of those earlier misplays, and he's gonna find what he's looking for. 1v1 goes to the Vladimir this time. Meanwhile, bottom lane with Xayah down, we'll see Kinesis Esports look for a turret of their own, and presumably take it. Again, this match stays super even. Tirsona's looking for the solo kill, potentially. There's the Thunderlords, the Ignite is still taking a flash over the wall. Tirsona gets it. Ednog now diving onto Paniona under his second turret. With a dunk, he claims another. Oh, man. And the thing that I'm worried about, this game actually now doesn't look so even because now there's a 2k gold lead over to Supernova. But this game has looked relatively even the whole time if you just look at raw gold across the whole team. But if you actually look across each whole team, the main issue, I think, for Kinesis is how concentrated their gold is how almost every single kill is on Bobby Big Plays right now. There's the only other kills that have gone down are on this Vladimir, who's behind in lane by a good bit and has 3 deaths to his name, and thus, even with that kill, isn't going to be a powerhouse anytime soon, and to the support. So pretty much all the really impactful kills, all the really impactful gold has gone to Bobby Big Plays this game. Whereas Supernova has a much more even spread. They've got 2 kills on almost all of their carries, including their Lulu carry. Because Tirsona is a little bit bloodthirsty in this game. And that's potentially going to come back to bite Kinesis in the butt once we get later on into this game, and they need the Vladimir, they need the Kled to start doing more work. Though, to be fair, Vladimir doesn't need a whole ton of gold to be relevant, because he can sort of be a little bit more of a durable, consistent damage dealing source and not so much a burst source of damage. And Kled has that utility that I talked about in draft, so he can do fine out of a lost lane as well. So maybe Kinesis are still set up to have a perfectly fine mid and end game, even with their strange gold spread. Simple as Best, after whiffing on the Tides of Blood, is still going to be going for this fight. He thinks he's got some support, and it looks like he's right. Paniona dashing in is actually going to get slowed up. Now really big meme is coming around from the side, and Paniona may have bit off more than he can chew. Good night, sweet Kled. Leap over the wall, really big meme, looking to keep the fight going. Simple as Best, just 1 Q away from dead! Q from anyone at this point, even the Lulu. But Tirsona is not there to oblige. Sadly, an A Platypus is melting, but he does have Command Protect, as well as a Lulu to keep him alive. And now Rangito is the target, bleeding away, and a Command Attack to finish it. Project Panda, looking for the Feather Storm, perhaps. Actually, didn't have it all. Didn't have it up. Must have used it off screen at some point during that skirmish. And well done, Supernova. Well done in particular to Platypus, who survived a 3-man gank and then survived another turnaround in the middle of that skirmish, which dropped him down to 100 health. Just really, really difficult to kill on this Orianna, and was the one who bought the time for their team, for the rest of his team to flank into that fight. So, Platypus gets the Reverie Esports MVP award for that particular fight, which I just made up now and doesn't actually mean anything. But this fight might mean something. 2-man shockwave, really big memes over the wall. Simple as best, though, in the backlines. We'll see if Platypus can survive this one. Question answered, and decisively so. However, Eggnog may get himself another kill. No, Trigger Seed denies that. It's a shutdown to the Vladimir on the bloodthirsty support, and Eggnog could be in a bad spot now. Melting away to the Malefic Visions. Eggnog going to actually make it alive! The Mastery flashed, as well he should! Gets out of there with 50 health, and it's a cleanup from Really Big Meme. And Project Panda. Man, Supernova just took control of this game. Supernova 0, more like Supernova Hero. I'm not gonna make jokes anymore. I'm not gonna do it. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. They just happen. You know, I've got this demon with a really bad sense of humor that lives inside me and just comes out whenever I cast. I don't do it on purpose, I promise. There's the Kled ulti. But Beniona just rushing his way into a minion wave. He'll farm that minion wave, though. By God, he'll farm it. Supernova Hero. I appreciate that. Very, very good. I like it. Especially because it shows that you know this correct pronunciation of that word. So many people call it a Giro. It's not a Giro. It's not a Gyro. It's not a Gyro. I haven't heard anyone call it that. But Rangito gonna be chopped up into so much mincemeat here. Oh my God, that is a very dead Malzahar. He was already dead, Tearsona. You didn't need to do that. But maybe Eggnog is looking for a few more kills. This is a 2v3! This is a 2v3! And Tearsona and Eggnog are still going aggressive. They've got the redemption, they've got the heals. I don't know if they've got what it takes, though. Eggnog will eventually go down. But it took so long. And they still only traded 1 for 1. Supernova, though, are going to be going for a Mountain Drake off the back of that. And Ivern on the top side of the map is going to be in no position to steal this one away. So it will be easily secured by the Lulu, of course. But of course. And Really Big Meme hunts down Daisy. Sends her back to the dirt from which she came and which she is made out of. Supernova now looking to gain vision control in the enemy jungle, trying to encroach on their opponent's territory and perhaps take that last standing turret outside of the inhibitors. As a Really Big Meme is on that bottom side of the map right now. Beniona getting chunked down, drops his mount, but Really Big Meme could be in some really big trouble. That was a cheap one, I'm sorry. Rangito, though, dropping the exhaust. Really Big Meme now just trying to get a 1 for 1 at the very least. He realized his life was forfeit, but with the flash of mastery and the closing of his wings, he topples over to the ground. Poor guy. Couldn't quite make it. Yeah, I know the feeling, love. It's been a long day for me, too. But you know, if I gotta solo cast this game, then you've got a jungle in it, my man. I would like to sort of do a little retrospective of the game so far, though. And particularly of Olaf, who usually is a centerpiece for Kinesis' roster. He's usually on Olaf, as his name would suggest, and as I mentioned in Draft, though for those of you just tuning in, you may not have heard that. And this time around is on a very different champion. This Ivern is something I don't think I've personally ever seen him play, nor the like of it. Not that there's very much like Ivern outside of him. And really, he hasn't had nearly as much of an impact as I usually expect from this player. So, going into the second draft, regardless of if this is a win or a loss, as I still think Kinesis have a real chance in this game, though they are at quite a disadvantage, I imagine we see Olav move off of the Ivern. Now, it's not a guaranteed thing. It may not actually be the crux of why they're having a losing situation in this game. I think a lot of it comes down to Platypus playing really well and Eggnog winning his lane. Like I said, that top lane is such a volatile matchup. Whichever one gets ahead is going to likely stay ahead. And the Darius got ahead, as you can just see by looking across the scores. But I feel like Olav hasn't had nearly as much of an impact as he usually does. I'm not saying he's had no impact. But usually he's a centerpiece for the team. Usually he's the one charging in, picking fights, and just straight up carrying Kinesis. And that's not the kind of performance we're seeing this game at an 0-2-6 scoreline. Admittedly, Ivern's usually preferred to get assists rather than kills, but I think my point has been made. I'd like to see him on something a little more proactive and something a little more carry-oriented, generally speaking. Baron, though, is a real threat to Kinesis at the moment, and they are trying desperately to get some vision control over and around it, as Beniona does his best to match off against Ednog bottom lane, both with teleports already. These teams are looking to start the Baron dance. We'll see which one of them dances it better. Doesn't look like Kinesis at the moment as Rankito gets chunked away, going for some vision. Does have a little bit of a shield, but is flanked on the side by Project Panda, who didn't even have time to get the assist, actually. Bobby Big Plays now getting chased away. Flash by Really Big Meme. Heal to try and keep Bobby Big Plays alive. He'll make it back to the airdrop of a bit of healing for him. But Kinesis lose a lot of resources, as well as one of their own. Malzahar going down. That could be the signal to go on the Baron. I wouldn't begrudge Supernova that opportunity. They've certainly earned it with a kill onto the Malzahar, but they seem a little wary. Maybe a kill onto the Ivern would be enough. Maybe even just taking the Ivern's flash as he jumps over the wall into the back of the red buff pit. And Nog, meanwhile, knocking away at this secondary turret, the last one remaining outside of the inhibitor turrets. And chunking down Beniona as well. Meanwhile, the rest of Supernova are looking for a team fight. They're fairly confident in their ability to take a 4v4. I think the only thing that could prove disastrous for them is Simple as Best getting a great engage, and there's a flash forward joke going for just that. But the ulti only lands on 2, and Supernova kited back. Platypus gets chunked down in the pool, but there's no more damage to throw his way. And meanwhile, Really Big Meme is wreaking havoc in the backlines. The support is down already. Simple as Best will fall. Tearsona picking that up. And now the chase is on. We'll see whether or not they can catch the Ivern or the Lucy. And remember, this flash is down, and a leap over the wall means Olaf is secured. Kled passing by, taking the scenic route. And this is the go signal for Baron, that's for sure. Don't really think there's any possible contest here from Kinesis. And that is quite unfortunate. That was a really well-played disengage by Supernova, if we want to cast our minds back 30 seconds or so. See if you can do it, folks, to that team fight that just went down. As I mentioned it, Simple as Best executed on it. A really good Hemoplague engage by Simple as Best, followed up perhaps by Beniona coming in on Skarl, would be basically the only way that I see a team fight win for Kinesis happening. And Supernova recognized that, and as soon as Vladimir jumped in to try and make that happen, they instantly backed away. They burned everything that they could to just try and neutralize the Vladimir. Make sure the ult had worn off, make sure the Vladimir had burned all his cooldowns, they didn't have anything else to throw, and then they turned that back around. Once the enemy has exhausted all their resources, and admittedly done some good damage. Platypus was down to a few hundred hit points, Really Big Meme was at half, but that's not good enough. Close doesn't count in League of Legends. Close is only good enough in hand, shoes, and horse grenades, as they say. And we are not playing either of those games. Fictional as they are. Dragon, again, going to be going over to Supernova. Another Mountain Drake, which will be disastrous for Kinesis' turrets, should Supernova ever find their way onto them, which seems to be their next goal, with those Baron buffs swirling at their feet, and 2 Mountain Drakes ready to help them take down these structures. Simple as Best, though, is waiting for the flank. This is incredibly ballsy. We'll see. I mean, this is basically Kinesis' only way back into this fight. There's Kled ulting in, but Super only lands, or Simple, pardon me, only lands his ulti onto 1. Admittedly a good target, Project Panda, but I don't think it's enough. Shutdown onto the Kazakhs. Perhaps I have spoken too soon, but Olaf is getting shredded, and Project Panda, even the target of that early aggression, is now just hurting and cleaning house. Beniona will melt, and yes, they killed the Kazakhs, but it was a Pyrrhic victory, my friends. It came at such a cost. You know, I really can't blame Kinesis for that, though. I really can't blame Kinesis for trying that, because that is their only way back in. They had one last shot. If you had one shot, one opportunity, Would you miss your chance? Would you Hema-plague only one person? Because apparently Simple would. But you know, I don't want to lay all the blame for that fight on him. Honestly, they were in such a hole. They were down so deep without a ladder to get them out that I don't think that team fight would have had to have been miraculous. It would have had to be a 5-man Vladimir ulti plus a 5-man Kled ulti even. But in the end, that is game 1 going over to Supernova 0. They will take the lead in our best of 3 series, and we'll be getting into game 2 as soon as we possibly can, everybody. Please don't go anywhere. My name is Octavian. I am sadly joined by nobody on the desk tonight. It's all me. It's just me flying solo. But hopefully you've been enjoying what you've been watching so far. If you have been, tap that follow button. Catch us live when we are live later on every Saturday. But also, stay tuned, because we'll be going to game 2 very shortly. Be right back, everybody.
Every child in Valorant has heard the tale before about the cursed mummy boy who felt his heart no more. So sad and lorn, the helpless lad, Amumu was his name. He ventured out to find a friend and learn about his bane. For many years, young Amumu traveled through the lands, determined to make friends if only they would understand. But even when Amumu stood upon the ledge of home, his hope would disappoint him and he would remain alone. But then the curse began to whisper in his ear. It would confirm what was Amumu's biggest fear. It pledged that never shall someone become his friend. It pledged that he shall be alone until his end. But sorrow and despair became too much to bear. The moment when Amumu realized what he had done, too late it was for him, for them. The evil curse had won. The anger and the anguish overwhelmed his fragile soul and caused a wicked tantrum that he never could control.
Hi, everybody. I'm half tempted to keep this music going, but I'm going to turn it all the way down as we get into the draft for game number 2 between Kinesis Esports and Supernova Zero, who have beaten out their parent team to make it here through to the finals and have given us a really good show as to how they might have done that in game number 1. Having a bit of a messy start, it was rather even between the two teams, but then once team fighting rolled around, once laning phase broke wide open, Supernova broke wide open and pushed the game through to a victory very swiftly. The bans are actually looking quite similar. I think those are all the same bans from Kinesis, so not changing up their ban strategy depending on colors, as they are going to be on blue side now, and we will be seeing Supernova switch to the red, and Supernova are going to be banning fairly similarly as well, not quite actually. Ivern now taken out of the picture, and Lulu of course banned given that they are on red side and do not want that first picked away from them. The answering first pick though will be the sort of second string support that we see so often nowadays in the form of Karma, so that won't be going over to Tirsona, but we'll see what will eventually, at the very least, as we're waiting on Supernova's next 2 picks. And that gets us all nice and caught up with the draft so far. So that gives me some time to, just chat. How you guys doing? We all good? That's good. That's nice. Well, Kazakh's locked in. Really Big Meme did a great job on that. And Platypus was good on Oriana. If it ain't broke, there's no reason to fix it. So they're going to be going ahead and not fixing it, which sounds worse than it is. They didn't have to fix it. That's why they're not. I don't know. I feel like that got through. I feel like my message got through there. Oriana Kazakhs, though, locked in, as we saw in last game, quite a potent combo. I would like to see, as I mentioned towards the end, for Kinesis' kind of depressing end of last game, Olaf on a champion that he can be more relevant on. And obviously, he won't be back in the Ivern, because that was banned away. So I'm excited to see what they go with for Olaf in the jungle. Gragas is a choice, I suppose. Again, usually what we see this player on is Olaf, but usually what we see this player on are champions that can head up the front line, that can pick team fights, that can do engagements and carrying sort of things for their team. So Gragas does fit that build to some extent. He can make team fights happen, he can make engages happen, he can be the shot caller, and Simple is going to pick up Azir from his position all the way down at the bottom of the ladder, pull him back up here to the finals tonight. When everything's on the line, if they lose this match, they are out not only of our finals, but of all of the prize money, which adds up to $180 cash value, by the way. Project Panda might be going back to this. Xayah was successful on that, and, as I mentioned with their first 2 picks here, Supernova seeming to be under the mantra of if it ain't broke, don't fix it, but then again, it ain't locked in yet. And you know what mantra we casters follow? Don't cast hovers. It's the first rule of Caster Club. You don't cast hovers. I'm really tempted to, because these are some interesting choices. Nautilus locked in for Ednog, not the carry-oriented sort of laner that we often see this guy on, and it's not a hover anymore, so I can talk about it. But yes, I won't. I will decidedly not. By talking about how I won't talk about it, I'm not going to... You know what? Don't try and follow my logic. Don't. Xayah gets locked in, though. I could have talked about it the whole time. If only I were prescient enough to know that. Xayah does get locked in. Nautilus is the real big change, and actually I feel like makes for a better team composition than top lane Darius did for Supernova's comp here, because Nautilus doesn't rely as much on rolling his lane. Nautilus doesn't rely as much on getting a lead. Nautilus doesn't care, really, at all. He just gets his kit, it's very strong, and he's able to supply that utility later on in the game. And however strong Ednog was, I don't really think it was necessary for Supernova to have a carry Darius out of the top lane to win that game. It was kind of icing on the cake. It was a bit of a win more situation. And you just need to win. You don't need to snowball super, super hard. So to have the reliability of a Nautilus, I think is a really good idea. It will be matched up against a Camille, a pick that you don't see as often nowadays, since she did see sort of a slow roll of nerfs ever since her initial release. But is still something of a strong pick, especially into tanks, where she can do quite well, has that percentage chunk on Precision Protocol. And Varus, again, another staple of earlier Season 7 meta that hasn't seen as much play recently, but has seen some. So, really, Kinesis are drafting a composition that's strong, but seems a few patches old. These may just be more comfort picks for these players, or it may be that these particular picks they want to grab because they work well together, and I can see that for sure. They've got really good team fighting control between Emperor's Divide, Chain of Corruption, Camille's ult that I should know the name of, Hextech Ultimatum, pardon me, that's what it is. They've got all this ability to lock down a certain space, and that's going to be really, really useful to them, as I feel like a Spell Shield is going to be really, really useful for Project Panda. So I like the Morgana lock-in, even though Morgana is less than common nowadays. Mainly because of her longer cooldowns and short auto range, making it hard for her to actually get good trades in lane. So it's going to be tough for Tirsona to contest Rangito's Karma in lane. But later on, Morgana offers a lot more pick potential and almost equivalent safety, depending on the usage of Spell Shield. Karma's kit is more well-balanced as a whole kit, I would say. And I don't mean that as in the champions are unbalanced. I mean that as in there's more power spread throughout the kit. So each of Karma's individual abilities is really rather strong, and none of them outshine the others all that much, which is kind of the point of Karma, given that she's fairly unique in the fact that she doesn't have an ulti, she just has the ability to empower the rest of her kit. Whereas Morgana has a ton of power bound up in 2 of her abilities. And the Dark Soil as a support is basically just a way to proc Spell Thief's Edge, and you have to be really, really precise with your timing and usages of your Q and E. But that sort of in-depth analysis of the champions aside, we've got the spectator delay to get into, and maybe we'll come back to that later once we've gotten through it. My name is Octavian. It is a joy to be casting for you all tonight, and hopefully we'll be seeing a joy of a game to watch once we do get onto the Rift. Give me these 2.5 minutes to make it there, and in the meantime, I'll leave you with some music. I'll be right back, guys. Joy of joys, it is our customary pause into the first game. Apologies, it seems one of the players DC'd, and everybody's very happy about it in chat, but let's not look at that. We don't want to see happiness. My name is Octavian, and we are in onto the riff for game number 2. This does at least give me some time to do my intro, as I am always overlong with these sorts of things, for our first Rift Cup of ever here in Reverie Esports. We're going to be having one of these every month. I just want to take this time to explain how we got where we are. I won't go back too terribly far, though. And to get into these, anybody can enter, by the way. If you've got a team of 5, and you've got 5 functioning computers all with keyboards and mice, and you know how to play League of Legends, well, actually, that's not really a requirement, I suppose. But if you do want to enter, you can. Just get on over to our website, or just Google Reverie Esports, or look down below the Twitch page. There's a lot of links everywhere. You can find them. I may have to get back to what I'm saying, though. As we've got a 5-man stack from Supernova. But it looks like they won't encounter too terribly much. You can enter if you'd like. And we hold tournaments every Saturday, all of which lead up to our monthly tournament on the last Sunday of the month, which is our Rift Cup. And every Saturday, whoever comes in first place gets 4 qualifier points. Second gets 3, third gets 2, and fourth gets 1. The math works out pretty easily. Whoever has the most qualifier points comes in as the first seed into the tourney, and the first 6 teams, the 6 teams with the most qualifier points at the end of the month, are invited to our Sunday tournament. So if you are interested and you think you can compete with the big boys here at Reverie, then come on down next Saturday, because we are always going and always willing to see new faces. Anyways, let's get down into this game. Thank you, Project Panda and Zaya, for the segue, as we've got some actually rather interesting picks. We haven't seen a Azir in a long time. At least I personally haven't. Maybe you have. And it's going to be matched up against Platypus's Orianna, which we saw last game is something of a powerhouse. I'm a little worried for Simple, but Azir does scale quite well into the end game, so even if the lane doesn't go heavily in his favor, he does have that going for him. But what I want to talk about most is this top lane matchup, thank you, camera, where Ednog is on a very different champion than what he usually plays. Oftentimes, we'll see him on Darius's Darii, I'm not sure what the plural of that would be, or something like a Camille. We've seen him play that in the past. You know, these carry top laners, Fiora as well as in this player's wheelhouse. So to see him jump back to something like a Nautilus so foreign to his usual playstyle is curious. And even though a Nautilus lane may not be too terribly exciting to watch, I'm excited to see how it plays out, if only because of my previous knowledge of this player. And you too can have that previous knowledge by just clicking follow and tuning in to our weekly Saturday broadcasts. Alright, I'm going to stop plugging the stream now. I hope you're enjoying though. The last lane, which I haven't really touched on too terribly much, but I did talk about a good amount in draft, is down here in the duo lane. Thank you once again, camera. As Project Panda and Sona continue the shove, something that Zaya is surprisingly good at, with her ability to call back those feathers through the minion wave, as well as having piercing attacks on most of her autos. She can shove a lane up something fierce, and there's not very many laners that can contest it, which is one of the reasons why you see a lot of Zaya play nowadays. It's not just that she's the shiny new champion, but Really Big Meme finds Olaf clearing away his blue buff. Olaf flashes over the wall, but there's the Void Spike to finish it. First blood to Really Big Meme. We have a kill on the clock much faster than game 1, and already it's going in favor of Supernova. But we've got a lot of time left yet to play, and let's look down on this bottom lane where Tyr is still looking for a snare, potentially. Doesn't look like it. Just going to keep the shove going. Tyr playing pretty far up. Snare gets dodged away. Sona actually going to take some good damage on the way out, but Rangito does get chunked a bit himself. And let's talk about the impact of that first blood. Kha'Zix, as we all know, snowballs dang hard. And Really Big Meme in particular seems to do quite well on this Kha'Zix. Now, this is a player that I'm not too terribly familiar with. I believe he's new to the Supernova roster, or maybe it's just somebody who's been there for a while who's playing with a new name. They do that to me a lot. One way or another, though, the player seems familiar on the champion, if last game is anything to go by. Sample size of 1. And I'll have to get back to that in a second. Snare onto Bobby Big Plays. Project Panda doing some good damage. There's another snare into Bobby Big Plays. He doesn't have the heal, he has to flash away! Both summoners off the Varus now, I can't even talk. Really Big Meme coming to the mid lane. And that is huge for Project Panda and Tyr, as they now are going to have absolute control of this lane, unless Gragas has something to say about it, perhaps. He's down there in the try, but he's gets spotted out by a ward. So yes, basically my point boils down to really big meme knows how to play Kha'Zix, and he got an early lead, so I'm kind of scared for Olaf. I imagine there'll be more invades in his future, or if not that, at least a Kha'Zix who's doing some serious damage in these mid-game fights. It's not necessarily a guaranteed thing, though. Really big meme looking for that gank that I was talking about, though. The slow lands from the red buff, Olaf around the corner, but I don't think that's enough. And yeah, heal gets burned by the Azir. Now Ednog leapt onto. I was thinking that Beniona would win this lane on Camille, and indeed it seems he will. Ednog has to flash away from the sweep of the leg. I just realized I could have made like a Karate Kid reference there, and I didn't. But in saying that, I just did, so... Get segued, chat. Beniona, though, going to try his best to push this wave out. Unfortunate for him that he doesn't have a lot of mana left after that little engagement, or else he might have been able to get the wave under the turret, but still, Ednog is willing to burn the teleport to get back to lane. So, Beniona still actually pulls a summoner, so good for him. 2, actually, if we consider the flash that he got just chasing Ednog back, so... This top lane looking pretty darn good for the Camille so far. As Bobby Big Plays shoves that lane out. I'm actually a little surprised that he was landing autos as well as his E into that lane, shoving it up. I guess just trying his best to get as much farm as he can while he's got breathing room. But Beniona, I may have to talk about bottom lane a little bit later. There's the depth charge, and Beniona, after TPing in, drops to 200 health into the Nautilus lane. Because this Nautilus went double Doran's Ring and Corrupting Potion. Oh, Ednog. You can't just let a champion be a tank, can you? I guess that's not too terribly uncommon, though, honestly. Beniona just caught off guard by the early base damage of a Nautilus plus a little bit of AP. I don't think he's in any sort of dire straits, though. Honestly, there's not a lot that Ednog can do now that his ulti is down and without flash to actually force a kill onto Beniona. He either got it then, or he doesn't really get it. Especially considering the sustain that Camille can bring to bear. But Beniona's still going to respect the loss of health in base. And he doesn't have TP again, a second time, obviously. So, going to have to walk all the way back up to that lane on those bladed feet. Supernova Zero sitting just a little bit ahead. I'm curious now to see where really big meme shows his face next. He's had success basically everywhere he's gone. Perhaps mid lane again with heal still being down on Simple as best, but Simple seems to understand that he's at something of a weakness at the moment. Bobby Big Plays and Rangito walking forwards. Neither of these laners have level 6 yet, but Project Panda still gets chunked below half. Good binding onto Rangito, but it's a little too late to win that particular engagement. Project Panda does have some sustain, but another piercing arrow brings him low enough that I imagine he has to base here. And indeed he will. That's actually going to put a bit of a discrepancy between the XP sort of breakpoints in this lane, because now Bobby Big Plays has level 6. Project Panda won't have it for a good while longer. Even if he's close in terms of XP, he still has to walk all the way back down to the lane, get there, kill off those minions that would give him those fateful bits of XP. Maybe really big meme plans a trip to the bottom lane to try and equalize that. But well played by Bobby Big Plays and Rangito to keep that lane shoved up when previously they were having a tough time doing that. Oh my god, Beniona is getting chunked, not respecting Ednog's damage once again. He may end up paying the ultimate price. There's the hook, it lands, the flash to counter, and Beniona makes it under turret. Good god! Did Camille get nerfed that hard? Or is Ednog just rocking some serious level advantage right now? What is it, 7? No, it's 7-7. He doesn't even have a huge level advantage or anything like that. Beniona just is not respecting Nautilus damage. And also on top of that, it may be due in part to the fact that Camille has seen the nerf hammer a few times of late. A lane that, honestly, I imagine a lot of people thought was won in favor of the Camille from draft, and I do not blame anyone for thinking of that, is now going decidedly in favor of the Nautilus with a 10 CS lead over to Ednog. And Ednog doesn't even need this. That's the thing about a Nautilus lane. He does not need the lead. Beniona, on the other hand, does, and he is looking for it desperately, but Platypus is coming from the mid lane. Beniona now going to be dropping the Hex Tech ultimatum just to try and pick some sort of fight, some sort of favorable situation, but in the end a kill goes to Platypus. A lane that, again, was already in favor of Supernova. It seems the only place now where Kinesis have any sort of strength is bottom side, and Olav hanging around on that side of the jungle is just going to get caught out again by Kha'Zix here. I don't know what Kinesis' next move should be to try and counter some of the losses that they're sustaining now. Top lane is falling so very hard. Much more just drastically in favor of the Nautilus than I ever anticipated. I'm still sort of dumbfounded at that, but you know, let's not dwell over long in any one lane. But even looking across the rest of the map, it doesn't look great for Kinesis, particularly in the jungle where Olav is arguably having an even worse time of it. He has only died that one time, and if you look just at CS numbers, he is ahead, but that's just because he's been farming camps more, and he's been farming things like the Krugs that he's currently at, which give a deceptive amount of CS. Good dodge by Rangido. But if we look at what really counts, this bottom lane, apparently, there's the exhaustion of Project Panda, and as I was saying, Kinesis do still have strength down here. Tiersona is feeling the brunt force of that strength too, as he gets a snare of his own on the way out. It's a double kill to Bobby Big Plays. This is a worrying mirror of last game. This is really a very worrying mirror of last game for Kinesis, as Platypus actually doesn't quite land the shockwave. I thought once again Simple as Best was going to go for an overextension, but maybe it's Olav who does. The heal does not do quite enough to get Olav out. No, Really Big Meme snipes it again. Those Void Spikes have been the nemesis of this fat Gragas man, and it's a double kill to the Bug in the mid lane. And oh my god, this is such a mirror of game one. This is game one, but with different champions. Ednog has a lead in lane in a snowbally matchup. Now, admittedly, I thought it would snowball the other way, but the statement still holds true. Mid lane sees Simple as Best overextending now and again, even when Olav is around, and a little bit of miscommunication between the jungler and mid laner from Kinesis, perhaps. And bottom lane is going solid for Bobby Big Plays and Rangido. So I really feel like Kinesis need to rally around bottom lane. They've got a comp to do it, too. Azir is great at roaming. Olav is awesome at ganking now, post 6 on Gragas. They can focus this bottom lane. Camille can teleport down there. Speaking of Camille's teleport, she did just teleport down there. I meant for a gank, but I guess to hold the wave works as well. But Kinesis need to recognize this. They need to realize we're strong in exactly one place. Let's rally around that. Let's play around our strengths and try and cut our losses. But the last thing that we've seen from them is an attempted gank in the mid lane, attempting to bring down Platypus. And I'm not saying that can't work. I'm not saying that there's no hope for top and mid. We're not nearly that far into the game. There's a 1 or 2k gold lead at most. It's just worrying because the game 1 looked exactly like this, and we all know how that turned out. So I don't want to say that Kinesis has lost this game because they've lost top and mid by a small margin in the early game like they did last time. But it's very realistically a problem for them that could keep recurring if they, again, have to play Supernova Zero in the future or something along those lines. And they have to recognize that and maybe play around it, I feel. But who knows? I might be wrong. I'm wrong all the time. Believe you me. Guido potentially landing the snare, but there's a Feather Storm that's going to be snaring him up. The Bilgewater Cutlass comes down, and Really Big Meme is flanking from behind. And it looks like Supernova have recognized Kinesis' point of strength and are now looking to shut them out of the game. With Really Big Meme showing up top lane for his 4th kill of the match. One of the main differences between game 1 and 2 is that this Kha'Zix has gotten a lot more gold a lot more quickly than last time. Really Big Meme tossed back under the turret, flashes over the wall of shield-bearing soldiers, and Platypus is there for the finish. It seems that Kinesis either haven't recognized what their problem is or simply don't have what it takes to field a good solution to it, but they've still got a late game to fall back onto. They've still got a Azir, they've still got great team fighting, and even Varus does well in the end game. The main worry I have is that Orianna does well in the end game as well, and I mean, Xayah is pretty strong. Rangito, though, getting caught out potentially in a 2v1, but Really Big Meme's going to get shut down. That's great. Again, the kill goes to Bobby Big Plays. Again, this Varus gets stronger. This AD carry gets stronger. And Tirsona gets flanked on. Rangito doing his best to bait this. Tirsona going so aggressive. Oh my god. I mean, Supernova can definitely make mistakes. Those were some rather egregious mistakes, actually. Particularly Tirsona going that far for the kill. I can understand Really Big Meme. He's 4-0. He sees an enemy support caught out in the jungle a little bit. Even with the AD carry nearby, he's like, I'm Kha'Zix. This is what I do. This is my bread and butter. He jumps in, he tries to go for the kill, but it's not really what a support Morgana does. Anyways. Here's Ednog coming in from the side, looking to try and steal away this dragon, but he won't be able to accomplish too much. The shockwave lands onto Beniona. This is still just a 2v4, though. Now a 2v5, and as I said, Supernova can make mistakes. Orianna's got nowhere to run, turns to trade for the 1-for-1. But that's just fine. A 2-for-1 trade, and the Infernal Drake goes to the side of Kinesis. This is different. This isn't game 1. This is breaking the laning phase much earlier. I remember back in game 1, at the 15 or 16 minute mark, I talked about how the laning phase was still curiously going on, and usually we see that break much earlier, this far into one of our tournaments here at Reverie. But Kinesis have broken out of it much quicker. They're making use of the Varus, and I like that. So maybe they do have the solution to their woes. I think it will come in the form of moving Bobby Big Plays around the map and pushing for these skirmishes that their comp is so much better at this time around. They've got tools like Azir and Gragas and Camille even. They are going to get shoved in here in the mid lane though. We'll see what sort of defenses they field to deal with this. As Supernova are looking to take a bit of a turret lead. This mid lane turret already whittled away, but there's the flash body slam from Olaf. Project Panda is the target. He's tossed back into the team, but he has Featherstorm to get out, and Beniona, a little bit low in health, had the priority of leaving rather than claiming that kill. Platypus tossed back, but he does have flash as well as a heal from his AD carry. It's a 1-for-1 trade though as Morgana goes down. And that looked like disaster was nigh for either side there at a few points in that fight, but it didn't go as disastrously as it could have. The main difference though is that Ednog wasn't involved. That was actually a 4v5 for Supernova. They still came out 1-for-1 in, which means that they could free up their top laner's time to shove a side lane, and that is exactly what Ednog did, getting that turret that they were after in the first place. I mean, really, that fight broke out because they were trying to take an outer turret. They just happened to grab a different one instead. So Supernova do creep a little bit further ahead with that. And Kinesis are going to have to look for some lane control, some vision of their own, perhaps near the mid lane, to get their own shove going. And I think they actually do have a better sieging comp, if only because Xayah is relatively short range when compared to Varus. Really Big Meme over the wall. You'll be just fine. And it looks like they're doing just that. Kinesis now clearing some wards near the mid lane, potentially going for a shove. I mean, to say nothing of an Azir in terms of a siege situation. Simple as best is going to be strong here as well. And they're going to go for that turret. And actually, Supernova have barely anyone fielded here. Let's see. Yeah, that turret's basically dead. Well, that was a lot more anticlimactic than I anticipated, but good job. Good job, Kinesis. And they're going to help to even up that gold discrepancy. Still 3k back, but that's not very much at all in the grand scheme of things. Especially not as the game wears on. A lot of it now is going to come down to vision control and keeping track of Kha'Zix, which I think will be really key. Really Big Meme is going to be looking for flanks. He's evolved wings as well as his claws, but he evolved wings, I believe, first, as he seems to do pretty frequently. And he just wants to get into the back line and make these picks happen and get all those jumpy resets. And it's fun to watch. As a play-by-play caster, I appreciate it. And it looks like they're looking for the flank right here. Supernova aware that this bush is not warded, but they're still going to get swept over the wall. Olav and Rangito still face-checking into the bush. They knew people were there, but Kinesis seemed willing to take this fight. Project Panda, though, will not die. The blade heal keeps him alive. The piercing arrow doesn't do it, and it's too little too late. Kinesis, they knew they were taking a fight there. The sweeping trinket saw Kha'Zix and Orianna in the bush. It's a quadra kill for Really Big Meme. I feel like the previous, honestly, kind of moderate successes of taking a turret and taking a dragon emboldened Kinesis into taking that fight. Either that or they weren't paying attention, because they had a sweep trinket going as they turned that corner. Gragas was sweeping that bush. They could see the outlines of a Kha'Zix and I think Orianna, 2 champions, one of them being Kha'Zix in that bush. I actually can't recall who was the champion sitting alongside Kha'Zix there, but they saw 2 members in that bush. They didn't see anyone else. Like, if you have no vision on the enemy team and you see 2 of them hiding in fog of war right in front of you, you want to then assume the rest of the team is like on top of you already. You want to assume the worst, not the best, when you're a team playing from behind like this. Maybe they don't realize how far behind they are playing from, but it just got a good amount further. To be fair, though, and let's be fair, that is my job as the unbiased voice of casting reason, I still think Kinesis have a chance here. Really Big Meme is controllable, and he's so much of Supernova's gold at this point. He's 8-1-2, and props to the guy, but it is possible to control a Kha'Zix. I'm taking the stance of devil's advocate here. By no means are Kinesis favored. I want to clear that up, especially not if Rangito face checks into bushes. That doesn't help. But I don't think that they have fully lost this game yet. But they're certainly on the road there. Especially with Ednog virtually uncontestable in the top lane. Beniona, with the Triforce completed, might be able to 1v1 this Nautilus now, but honestly, Ednog can just leave. If a threat starts to make itself apparent, as Beniona's going for that very same 1v1 that I mentioned. Ednog gonna duke it out for a little bit, buy some time for his team to take the dragon. The hook landing on the minion, as actually he may not have the option to leave anymore, having committed with the hook. But he's gonna turn around with his ulti. There's the dodge on the ulti, nicely done by Beniona. Ednog now getting chunked by Precision Protocol. And this is just a matter of chasing down the kill now, but it does get traded for that dragon. As well as that vision control in the top side does go to Supernova. I'd say that's just about worth it for Supernova, but it wasn't really necessary. Honestly, Ednog could have just backed away. And that's where all of the mistakes, all of the, honestly, almost all 9 kills that Kinesis have come from. And one of the things that worries me about Kinesis and about Supernova is Kinesis seem very good at capitalizing on oversteps, on misplays, but they aren't, a lot of their attempts to make fights happen sort of without that sort of impetus don't seem to work out for them. They don't seem to be able to proactively make plays very well. Really Big Meme stealing away the crab there. Or, no, it did, yeah, it got stolen. It's red. Got stolen by the Kha'Zix. Whereas Supernova have this propensity to drop the ball pretty frequently. And when they make mistakes, they make really big mistakes. They make diving past 2 enemy turrets as a Morgana support mistakes. Yes, I'm looking at you, Teosona. I still remember that, Teosona. Not going to let you forget that one. But they have not so far proven to be game-losing mistakes. In fact, not even remotely close. And really, it's just the result of being overconfident with a lead, which is a pretty luxurious weakness to have, I'd say. You know, it's kind of a first world problem of League of Legends players. Oh, I always play so much worse when I'm ahead. It sucks. I always get ahead in my games. I wish just once I could play from behind, but no, I'm just too good. I'm just too good at this game. Simple as best trying to toss back Really Big Meme, and does actually make it out with his life intact, but not with his ulti or his summoners. Or, pardon me, heal got burned, and Flash is already down. So he doesn't have his summoners, but one of them wasn't because of that. As well as that Rangito got chased back, so. Some small advantages accrued for Supernova in a light mid lane skirmish. And they may try to turn that into a Baron attempt. At the very least, they're going to turn it into priority over the pit. Where did that turret fall? I didn't realize there was a turret about to go down. But that's more gold for Supernova. As Rangito looking for the snare, gets spell immune and a 3-man shockwave over the wall. Ednog looking to follow up, smushes Rangito into so much paste, and there's the follow-up ulti onto Olav. You cannot outrun the depth charge, but you can outflash it seems. So he makes it out with a few hundred health left. But the hook on the Bobby Big plays, that's the target they're more interested in. And a binding on a symbol is best. Really well placed by Tyr. I commend him on that one. And Supernova have this game almost in the bag after that. I mean, I don't think with death timers still as relatively short as they are, they can win the game off of that, but they can take Baron, they can shove out some lanes, and they can come back with a vengeance and potentially win the game in the next 4 or 5 minutes. So there is one last desperate hope, one fading shining light at the end of the tunnel for Kinesis Esports. If they can win this next team fight, and then probably the next 3 after that, they can come back into this game. But it seems less and less likely as that light at the end of the tunnel grows dimmer and dimmer. And yeah, there's the shove down mid. Supernova just running it down mid. As Ednog runs it down bot, which does make sense given that he has teleport up. Beniona going to be pretty much unable to hold off the push with the Baron buffed Sunfire, Cape, Nautilus shoving that lane up. And the secondary turret is forfeit. It would be basically suicide for Kinesis to try and defend there, and Beniona caught out, rotating from bot towards mid. Burns the flash and likely goes down in the end. Even dropping the ulti. Yeah, maybe you could have held on to that for a potential fight, I'm not sure. At this point, some of these players may not be on their, I was about to say best behavior, but that doesn't really make sense. Oh, there's the one-man shockwave. Not quite as impressive as 3, but still gets the job done. Olav gets caught up by a binding, and with one top laner down for the count and one mid laner out of the picture, Supernova 0 are going to shove in potentially for the win. I don't really see why not. Inhibitor will crack easily. They're going to rotate down to the bottom lane to join up forces with their top laner. This is going to be GG, and in fact, if Supernova take this home, this is going to be GG to the entire series of our finals tonight and to the entire Rift Cup. Good lord, Ednog has a goddamn Guardian Angel completed already, on top of the quintessential tank core of Sunfire, Cape, Spirit Visage. He is just a titan, really, of the depths, even, you might say. But Supernova are going to play it as safe as they can, and perhaps safer than they need to, backing off to the Dragon Pit to take an Infernal Drake for themselves. And with 2 inhibitors down and only 1 turret left outside of the Nexus turrets, there's not very much more left to defend if you're Kinesis right now. Oh, look at that synchronized basing! Well, really big meme was a little off from the rest of the team. I don't know, I feel like they need a new jungler if he can't even synchronize base with them. I mean, what's the point? What's the point, honestly? Ah, God. Just horrible, horrible play. Throwing for his team, really. 9-1, You can't base at the same time. It's just not very impressive. Seriously, though, it is rather impressive. Coming back down to the ground, getting away from the bad jokes. Really Big Meme has put out some great Kha'Zix gameplay through this whole series. And from what I'm aware, the guy is pretty adept at that. One Trick has a dirty connotation among a lot of League of Legends players, but Really Big Meme can, to some extent, be described as a One Trick Kha'Zix player, and I'm very surprised that it didn't get banned out against him in either Game 1 or 2 because of that. And, potentially Kinesis Esports are kind of kicking themselves over that, since it seems Supernova 0 are more than willing to pick it and get that big old bug fed. Alright. Kinesis are on the clock now, though. They've got super minions shoving down mid and bottom. And while Baron buff did just mercifully expire on Supernova, this is basically their only opportunity to take a fight. They're going for it. Featherstorm to dodge the explosive cask. There's some havoc being wreaked by the Nautilus. Beniona cannot do his job. Diving to the backlines, he doesn't even chunk away the 80 carry, and he's caught in a shockwave and killed. It's a double going over to the Kazakhs. Do we see a triple leaping in onto Simple is Best? We may very well see it. No, it's a double going to Ednog. And Rangito gets chased back to the fountain, his tail between his legs. As it's GG. Supernova Zero knocking on the base turrets. One falls, the other soon to crumble. And that is the first Rift Cup. The first one ever. Going over to Supernova Zero, beating out not only Kinesis Esports, but also their parent team, Supernova proper, to get here to the finals and make it all the way. It's been a fun and exciting night, wild ride casting for you guys tonight. I hope y'all enjoyed not only the gameplay, but also my casting on top of it. And if you did, then please do tap that there follow button. It means quite a bit to us here at Reverie. And we do have weekly tournaments every Saturday, so tune back in next Saturday to catch us going live. If you really enjoyed my work as well, you can follow me at twitter.com/OctavianZilch to see whenever I go live for any of the myriad organizations that I work for. It's been great, as I mentioned, casting for you all tonight. Hopefully I'll be seeing you next time. But with all that said, and all of it done as well, that's going to be it for me and for all of us here at Reverie. Have a good night, everybody.